He's the CEO of Trinity Strategic Wealth, former Oklahoma State Senator, and Oklahoma Secretary of Finance. He's been helping Oklahomans save, invest, and secure their financial future for decades. Senator, Secretary of Finance, business leader Mike Mazzei. And now he's running for governor to help Oklahomans secure their faith, family, and freedom for the future. Hosted by City Elders.
Thanks so much for having me, Jesse. I'm delighted to be here with friends and among friends. Thank you for what you do with your passion and your energy and your time and your prayers for this wonderful country of ours and the people of Oklahoma. It seems that my calling in life has always had something to do with people getting their money's worth. Constituents, taxpayers, clients, of course. Now, my wife Noelle and I wanted a large family, but we had some challenges. The health issues were somewhat difficult. My wife suffered 2 miscarriages. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars on various health procedures and medical issues. We finally got around to what looked like a viable pregnancy, and the doctor was kind of enthused from that first blood test and said, "Hey, I think y'all need to expect twins." Well, twins would be cool. So we went in for that first ultrasound, and sure enough, the doctor found a nice, strong, healthy heartbeat. And then there was another, second strong, healthy heartbeat. But wouldn't you know it, there was a third strong, healthy heartbeat. And you know, God has a way of doubling back to you the seasons of loss. And the doctor looks at my wife and says, "Noelle, you know, what do you think? It's going to be triplets." And Noelle said, "Well, I think I can do triplets, but I'm not so sure about Mike." And Mike wasn't so sure about Mike either. You know, I'm leaning against the wall trying not to pass out. And the doctor looks at me, this is totally true, 100% true. "Mike, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, Doc, at least I got my money's worth." True story. And we do want the people of Oklahoma to get their money's worth, and we do want more growth and prosperity for our kids and our grandkids. But there are some major issues that need some drastic attention. Only 20% of 8th graders in Oklahoma can read proficiently. That's just tragic and outrageous. We've got a competitive disadvantage to the other no-income tax states when it comes to jobs and population growth because we've wasted hundreds of millions of dollars on wasteful green energy nonsense. And right here in conservative Oklahoma, we've adopted some of those liberal laws and ideas where we've made stealing merchandise from a store a misdemeanor. And to make matters worse, we've allowed foreign bad actors to buy up our treasured land across the state of Oklahoma. And those are 3 major reasons why we've decided to launch a campaign for governor. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on each of those issues, plus a little bit more about some of my personal journey that Jesse asked me to share. So these are the latest statistics on this next slide from what's called the Nation's Report Card. And you can see here, 8th grade math, only 17% of Oklahoma students are proficient. 2024 data, things actually got worse the last 2 years. Reading declined from where it was 2 years ago. We were at 21 or 22%. We dropped the last 2 years. When you do the numbers, and I'm a numbers guy, that's 500,000 students are going through our system right now, and they're not going to be prepared for a great job, and they're not going to be prepared for life. Well, in order to fix things, we need a drastic disruptive force for a paradigm shift. Now, how many of you like the Trump disruptive force that's going on in Washington, D.C. right now? Getting rid of insane spending projects, and I find it kind of curious just in the last couple of weeks that people have been totally freaking out in the liberal big media about the tariff wars. You know, it's kind of like, what did you expect Donald Trump to do? Say to all our global trading partners, would you please sit down with us and renegotiate new terms that are going to be better for us and worse for you? Or was he going to have to shock them with a little bit of fear to get them to come to the negotiating table and look at and remember they need us a lot more than we need them? And sure enough, they're coming to the bargaining table. Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, announced, I think it was this morning, that 75 countries have called and said, we're ready to talk. And it's that type of disruptive force that's necessary in our education system. We don't have time to go through all of the elements of this paradigm shift, but one of the ones I want to focus on is high standards and accountability. Some of you in tonight's group are business owners. My buddy Gary Stanislawski owns a very successful wealth management firm called Regent. And who else owns your own business, or you're a sole proprietor of? Okay, now what would happen to your businesses, my friends, if only 20% of your customers had a good experience or were satisfied or a good outcome? You'd be going out of business pretty fast. But we've got 500 plus school superintendents and 1,000 to 1,500 principals that have no accountability for terrible results. Well, that has to change. And if, Lord willing, we get a chance to serve the people of Oklahoma as governor, these are three things we are going to push into the system to be disruptive. One is to launch a major reading sufficiency program. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second with another slide. Two, we're going to transform school boards and district superintendents. I am appalled that in a super majority Republican legislature, we can get out of the Oklahoma Senate a simple, very common sense conservative solution to move school board elections to the general election date so parents are more involved in the process. But I was recently told last week by my stalwart friend, Representative Chris Banning from Bixby, that it's pretty much on hold and probably dead this year in the Oklahoma House of Representatives because he just doesn't have enough votes to get it passed. Well, we're going to beat that horn until we can get past it. And one of the things that is nice to talk about, although it's a little frustrating for former senators like myself and Gary Stanislawski, is we were so excited about becoming the majority back in 2008 that we were just relentless when it came to fixing things. And I like to remind people that true reform-minded conservatives fix things. I got to lead for years on fixing the state pension systems, which were on their way to bankruptcy. Gary Stanislawski, as chairman of transportation, put untold hours and effort into establishing what today we know as the roads program, and it gets $600 million of dedicated money, and we have restored literally all of the state-owned roads and, well, state-owned bridges that were falling apart. We did lawsuit reform, we did workers' comp reform, I launched the back-to-school sales tax holiday, we killed the death tax, we lowered income taxes from 6.5% to 5.25%. So there was a real spirit of reform back then, but we seem to have lost some of that energy and impetus. The third piece of this puzzle is to revamp college education departments and the regents for higher ed. If you're a Dr. Jordan Peterson fan like I am, I heard him say something very astute just recently, and it's that the education departments in our universities all across the country got stupid before the entire universities got stupid, because in these education departments they decided, you know what, we think it's cool as liberal professors in our elite ivory towers if everybody could just memorize a bunch of words and do word-based reading, and then they can sort of intuit the rest. And you know, our friends, Elena Ashley and Dr. Marshall, where'd you go? They know that stuff has been a disaster, but in addition to that, the next decade they thought, you know, it would be really cool to focus on everybody's self-esteem. And then the next decade after that, they thought, oh, it would be really cool to focus on social emotional learning, which was Dr. Deborah Gist's highest priority when she was superintendent of Tulsa Public Schools. Well, 3 decades of this, and you know, our schools are just a mess, and we're not teaching kids to read. So the only way we're gonna get things back on a proper course is to use the Trump-like money stick. And I've already had some working groups brainstorming on this to force our colleges to get rid of that nonsense and bring rigorous training and teacher prep back into the system. I know it can be done because they did it in Mississippi. So when Gary and I were in the Senate, we would look at these lists and we noticed that Oklahoma's 48th or 49th in reading outcomes, but Mississippi was, you know, behind us. Well, look at today. Mississippi, I don't have the numbers updated for 2024 yet, but they blew by us, and they're 21 in reading outcomes in the nation. Well, we're still basically last. And the reason is they decided to hire a statewide literacy director. They poured tens of millions of dollars into reading specialists and tutors and assessments at the beginning of the year instead of the end of the year to figure out where's the gap for each student, and we're gonna spend time with that student to get them up to mastery. And they junked that word-based association reading nonsense and mandated everybody go back to the discipline of phonics. And when we do that in Oklahoma, we will change the trajectory of thousands and thousands of lives for these students of ours to achieve greatness and to become leaders in our community and leaders in the world. Now, battling the forces of the status quo is often challenging, difficult, and we tend to encounter, I messed up the order of these slides, sorry. Challenging and difficult, and we end up dealing with not just adversity, But, sometimes depending upon our fields, particularly for you spiritual leaders and our friends like Jackson Lawmeyer, the powers of darkness that don't want faith and freedom to come into people's lives. And I had an episode in 2008 where my life was changed drastically from a car accident that left me with multiple spinal dislocations that were pretty hard to fix. And ultimately, I was left with a severe amount of catastrophic nerve damage that left me as an invalid for 10 years. And in order to help my clients and help my teammates, like the wonderful Jody Rom over there who never gave up on me, I had to lay on a training table on my side because I couldn't sit, I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand. I certainly couldn't do this without pain. I thought about dropping out of the Oklahoma Senate, as Gary knows, but there was still this stuff that needed fixing. And some of it was kind of in my wheelhouse. The finance stuff, the pension stuff, the budget stuff. And so we decided to keep persevering, and this is literally how I worked in the Senate chamber. You can see my thumb is up, and that's how I'm designating my yes vote for whatever was on the board at the moment, so I could stay out of pain, but I could cast my vote. Now, all of us deal with pain and suffering in one way or another as we walk this earth. And my low point was spending 10 days at the Cleveland Clinic, top brains in the world, top neurologist in the world. They put me through every test you can imagine, 10 days of that. They treat you really nice up there, but it was rough. At the end of this, during my consultation with one of the top neurologists in the world, she looked at me and she said, "Mike, your case is kind of atypical. It's going to be really hard to treat." My husband is an expert, I'm not making this up. My husband is an expert in herbal teas and how that can kind of help inflammation, and maybe you might want to talk to him. And I knew I was toast at that point. And my heroic dad took me up there, and he, for one, never gave up on me that we would find a solution and I would get well. But, at that moment, I pretty much lost all hope. All of you can relate to those moments in life where we've got, our hope is like a little candle and the flame is a light and it's sort of still lit, but it's kind of flickering. And then we take some sort of other blow and it's like somebody just dumped the candle with our little light of hope into a big bucket of water, and it just totally evaporates that little light. And that's where I was for a lot of dark days. I secretly started thinking about how to end my life. I just didn't want to live in pain anymore. But, I was a somewhat sophisticated financial planner, and I knew if I ended my own life, the kids and my wife wouldn't get the life insurance money. So that was a problem. I'm half Italian. Surely there's some Sicilian out there I can pay for a hit job. How do you pay for a hit job on yourself? And that was a little hard to figure out. Eventually I gave up, those ideas. And the Lord helped me learn something that became transformative for me. And that was how he spoke into the life of Joshua, who was probably just as terrified, probably obviously more terrified than I was. But he had this looming battle in front of him. I got 3 million people, Moses has just died, and I gotta go take over Jericho, and I gotta then go to war with this city and that city and this city and that city, and he's just terrified. But he learns from the Lord speaking to him, this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night. Then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. And of course, as he's speaking to Joshua, he's saying, over and over again, if you go into chapter 1 there, he says it 3 times, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. I did not feel strong and courageous, but I did finally start thinking about this word meditation and how Joshua practiced that in terms of what maybe Moses had written so far. And so maybe he had, this much, but my Bible had, this much. And so I started this routine day after day after day of sort of kind of figuring out what were the 10 scriptures. I eventually came up with 10. Here's 5 of them. What are the scriptures that I can say every day, over and over again? I can, when nobody's in my office, I maybe say them out loud. How do I keep yielding to God's sovereignty every day when I've totally given up on the fact that I'll ever get better? And I believe you can heal me, Lord, but you're sovereign, you're in charge, I submit to your will. And, that was a grueling process for me, but these scriptures were, a little bit better than calling the Sicilian. And so I still do this today, and I think maybe that's part of what God was trying to do, is teach me this habit. I must have been a slow learner, though, because this went on for years. But I've tried to teach my kids this, and the amazing part about turning over God's word in your mind over and over, and I would do it out loud when I could, it really is true what Paul says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I had some stuff that needed sanding out of my life. I was a type A, go-getter, check every item off of the list, both in business and politics. And, somebody came in my office and wanted to talk about something. I would sort of pretend that, I was listening, but I'd be going, how much longer are you going to be in my office? Because I got to get this stuff done. And, the Lord kind of wrestled that out of me. One of the ways he did it was my daughter. The oldest, before we had the triplets, was adopted from Russia with some special needs. High school was rough for her. She, has some sensory overload issues, and when you got triplets, and someday I'll tell you the story about kid number 5. She was going through a tough phase, and, calming down at night was tough. Well, we just kind of learned that after family time, to the degree we could still have dinner with each other, and the triplets and my youngest would go off, and then either in my room or my daughter's room, I'd just spend time with her. And frankly, I couldn't do anything. I just laid down, and she was in a chair or something, and she'd be on her computer, and I'd sometimes talk to her, sometimes just listen to music, but I was with her. I was spending time with her. She could calm down, and that would sort of just lead to some stability. And that was kind of a big turning point for me. Relationships take time. The people that you love need you, and they're more important than your checklist. I still like getting my checklist done, but I do try with the Lord's help to put people first. So I eventually made my way back, obviously. We found some experts that had some significant success with nerve regeneration. It wasn't easy. I mean, it wasn't maybe as hard as Joshua's 30 cities. I mean, some of you are biblical experts. I think in Exodus it lists like 30 cities that he had to conquer, Jackson. He's got a master's degree from ORU. I know he knows this stuff. But I went through 50 procedures, 100 injections each time, 5,000 injections over the course of 3 years. They were awful. I then, though, had to go through 4+ years of physical rehab, gut-wrenching, sweating. And the first time I took a 25-yard walk, outside my house, I got back and, it was all I could do to just not. But the Lord brought into my life a dedicated, rehab specialist, and he was willing to work with me out of the house. And I learned to sit, I learned to walk, I learned to stand. I started walking long distances. Today I can swim half a mile. I bet you can't do that. And I can even hike up 600 steps at Yosemite Valley National Park. So, with God, all things are possible. And God knows you by name. He knows exactly what you're dealing with today. I know some of you are supposed to be strong church leaders, but you obviously deal with financial issues, relationship issues, church personnel issues, health issues, and God knows you by name. And just like Joshua, just like Mike Mazzei, he will give you the strength to persevere. So never, ever, ever give up. And we don't want to give up on the economic and growth potential of the people of Oklahoma. And we've made some important progress. We've made Oklahoma a more business-friendly state in a lot of ways. They did end up reducing taxes from our era from 5.25 to 4.75. But those are the recent statistics, and obviously we've got a little ways to go. We fundamentally believe that it is possible to reset the finances of the state and become a no-income tax state. My hero, Ronald Reagan, said, a lot of times these solutions are simple. Making the change happen isn't necessarily easy, though. As a financial nerd, it seems simple to me. We do have to pay our bills. We do need to pay teachers more. We do need more law enforcement officers. But if we get rid of some debt, we're sitting on $5 billion of cash. Literally, if we used $1 billion of that reserves, and in my opinion, we need about $3.5 billion for maybe the next down cycle. But if we used $1 billion and we threw it at one of these last high amounts of pension liability, we'd free up $450 million of cash flow. And that's worth 0.5 point on another tax cut. And we could go from 4.75 to 4.25 overnight. There's some other items in terms of getting rid of wasteful tax incentives, not throwing money at corporate boondoggles that we don't have time to go into. But if you're a reader of the Mazzei Minute, I know some of you are, but there's a way to sign up for that. No, we've written thorough articles about here's how we can get it done. It would take 2, 3, 4, 5 years of successive strategies, but we're excited about sharing that with the people of Oklahoma across the state. This is some proof in the pudding that makes everyone hopefully realized the work would be worthwhile. These are the 9 no-income tax states. And here is Oklahoma, and this population growth is 10 years. So from the 2010 census to the 2020 census. And it shows that our population growth over that 10-year period was only 5.5%. But look at Tennessee. They're landlocked. They don't have oceans. They have a few small mountains. Look at Nevada. Most of that's desert. They do a lot of gambling over there. Unfortunately, we do a lot of gambling here. But Nevada had 15% population growth. Look at the economic growth. 15%, 10 years. That's not per year. That's like 15% for 10 years. What's Nevada's? 22%. Look at Tennessee. I've done some rough calculations, and if we just got the average job and population growth of all of these states, I took out Alaska. Nobody wants to move to Alaska. We'd have 400,000 more people moving to Oklahoma, and 400,000 more hardworking taxpayers can fund a lot of raises for teachers. And we'd have $50 billion of more economic growth and impact if we got rid of this competitive disadvantage that we have with other states. Lastly, we've got to stop the crazy boondoggle corporate welfare stuff, chasing mega deals that take 45 years to get a return on investment, and start figuring out how to focus on existing companies in Oklahoma growing 5 to 10 jobs. If you have 10,000 companies that get some help from our Commerce Department to get to the next level, and those 10,000 companies grow 5 jobs, you could get 50,000 jobs. This example, I was trying to do apple for apple, so the numbers are a little different. But then we only have 5, 6, 7 years to get a return on investment. And we've got to make our community safer. I mentioned this earlier. There's some unfortunate hypocrisy at the state capitol, where they said last year, we passed a bill that foreign owners can't buy land. Well, the powers that be, the people at the Attorney General's office, they worked out this affidavit. If anybody wants to see it, I will show it to you. If you want to purchase land in Oklahoma, you have to check box 3A. I am a citizen of the United States. This next line is going to shock you. Or you can check the box that says, I'm not a citizen of the United States, but an alien who shall become a bona fide resident of the state of Oklahoma. That's literally the loophole they created so they could buy up more of our land for who knows what kind of wasteful nonsense. So we're going to take that message across the state of Oklahoma. We hope you will check us out at mikeforok.com. And we just want to emphasize that Oklahoma is meant to be a land of prosperity and growth. We believe that Oklahoma is more than just a state. It's kind of a state of mind. You know, God made all of us with a heart, a soul, and a mind for a special purpose. I believe He made Oklahoma for a special purpose. And Oklahoma is kind of a place in our heart as much as it's a geographic location. And you, my friends, are its soul. There's no place like Oklahoma. I've been all over the world. I've been all over the country. There's no place like Oklahoma. None. And that's why we must protect and defend it. And if the great kingdom builders like you all help us choose faith and freedom, we can all make a better Oklahoma for tomorrow. Thanks so much for having me. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, and may his goodness bless all the people of Oklahoma.